Hello and welcome viewers to today's panel discussion. I am Haseen Taj, Engagement Lead at VAs. This session is presented to you by VAs and powered to you by IBM. We have a very interesting debate today on the topic, are women professionals okay to have partners who earn less than them? A debate that could be thought provoking and fierce too, by our prominent leaders from IBM. I'd like to introduce our lead anchor for this session, Ms. Esther Martini, CEO and Editor in Chief, People Matters. Hi, Esther.
Hi.
She has led different functions in HR for a host of blue chip companies like HP in Spain, TCS in India and UK, and many more. She has featured on LinkedIn Top Voice list. She has been recognized as top 30 influential leaders in HR tech, and also a remote influencer in 2022. She is part of the power list of top 200 biggest voices in leadership in 2022. Welcome, Esther. Moving on, we have a very interesting line of speakers today from IBM. Allow me to introduce the panelists for today. We have Yukti Punjabi. Hi, Yukti.
Hi everyone.
Hi. She is Director Strategic Account, IBM Technology. We have Anuj Malhotra. Hi, Anuj.
Hey,
Hi. Senior Partner and Vice President, Service Lines and Operations, IBM. We have Manoj Balachandran. Hi, Manoj. Head
good
Corporate,
evening.
Hi, good evening. Head Corporate Social Responsibility, IBM and South Asia. And we have Swati Rastogi, DNI leader, APAC at IBM.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, Prachi. I now hand over the stage to Esther. Over to you, Esther, for a wonderful debate.
Thank you so much, Haseen. Thank you very much, and very warm welcome to everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you're joining us in this live conversation. And as Haseen introduced the topic, are women professionals okay having partners that who earn more, less than them? And it's inevitable. I think in today's conversation, we're going to hear how this is inevitable. More and more women are entering the workplace, more and more women are choosing careers that were only limited to men a few years ago, and more women are getting better jobs and better opportunities. So it is inevitable. Now the question is, are women really okay with it? And we have the privilege to have Yukti and Anuj today, who have been brave enough to take on the four positions, saying yes, women are okay with it, society is okay with it, we are on that direction. And the challenging group, our Manoj and Prachi, have been kind enough to say, well, yes, it's inevitable, yes, we're moving towards that direction, but things are not okay, and there are still a lot of things that we need to really counter. And I think the objective we have as a group today is to bring perspectives, help all of you to think through afresh. Why are women okay? Why are women not okay? And with that objective, help, I think, the conscious mindset to have more and more of those conversations with the end in mind, to really create a dialogue, and through that dialogue make our workplace and our society more inclusive. So I'm going to start with the first question, Yukti, and I'm coming to you. And I know that you have to be very strong on yes, women are okay with that position. Each one of you is playing a role to help us stretch the thinking. And Yukti, there was one of the data points that the team had prepared for us on how even women who earn more tend to lie. And there was a specific census research saying that, women tend to actually say they earn less than what they earn. And men tend to also lie, saying that they earn more than they actually learn. So if we think that it's okay and women are okay, then why would women lie? What's your viewpoint on this?
Okay, I mean, not surprised with these figures, right? And primarily because, right, there's no denying that women earning more can overall impact the relationships or marriages as we see, and there are a lot of emotions attached to this shift. And primarily, this is because of obviously the generations of social conditioning, right? Where we have been clearly told that male or the men are the sole providers of the family, and especially when their worth is associated with their ability to earn and feed the family. So it's a lot with their self respect as well. And women are supposed to take care of the family. Hence, obviously, so this is like, so that it's very, this has been, I mean, we've been taught, right? And we've been wired to think like that and accept like that. But our very reason, right, to discuss today and challenge this notion is like, if you've seen over the last couple of decades, right, as you just said, right, as more women are getting higher education, they are entering the mainstream career workforce, building successful careers, they have better jobs and better money available to them. Hence, I think it's important to kind of realign the gender roles and the marriages as what we have been thinking. And it's an evolving process, of course. And when you challenge the status quo, and when you challenge the way we have been thinking for the years, it is going to take time to evolve into how we think forward.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yukti. And as Yukti is challenging us, I'm also going to challenge all of you to bring out your dilemmas as you listen to our panelists today. If you have dilemmas, if you want to bring on any questions or any contrarian point, please do feel free to use the chat because those comments are going to be coming to us live as we go along. So we're going to be taking all of your dilemmas, your questions live throughout the conversation. So Yukti was mentioning, and Manoj, I'm coming to you now because she's saying there are a lot of emotions attached, there are a lot of conditioning, there is a lot of situational that we have not only been brought upon, but also we have seen, those societal norms. And there was one article specifically that was mentioning about men are not man enough when the spouses earns more. So what's your take, especially because we're pushing you to really go against the motion today?
So thank you so much, Esther, and I know very good evening to everyone. It is a very debatable topic, right? And rightly so, because of the fact that even when I kind of talked about this particular topic to my daughter, who's a 16-year-old girl, she said, "Why are we even saying are women professionals okay to have partners who earn less than them? And why isn't the topic are men professionals okay to have partners who earn more than them?" Right? Even though it kind of means the same, but it comes from different points of view, whether you come in from a woman's point of view and a man's point of view. And to your question about a man is not man enough when the spouse earns more, I think that comes from a man's point of view, right? So I'm going to kind of trying to address it from that end, and definitely don't want to come across as somebody who's not supportive of all the amazing progress we have made with regards to how women are perceived and how they are how they are actually an equal partner in creating a household, right? But I'm just here to kind of state what is the reality as of things stands now, because even in part of my role as the head of CSR and a lot of these initiatives which are doing outside, this is what we are actually seeing, right? Um, if you look at, I know you were talking about a poll there, Esther, and then there are enough and more, reports and stats out there which says, if you have to define what is to be a man, I think even in defining what masculinity is, right? The two top things which actually come as being reliable, being dependable, and most of these things end up saying that this means that be a man, mardban, right? Making sure that you're basically trying to provide for the family, and essentially saying, hey, buck up, shoulder the responsibility, solve the problem, lead from the front. There are people who are dependent on you, and you can see this. It's kind of built into the psyche. And as a man, you're supposed to be the leader of the pack, his family, right? And this is kind of coming through evolution. thousands of years of evolution, right from the time when we've been cavemen to right now, uh, going out hunting and providing for the family to uh, right now having to exactly, I mean, instead of the meat, now it's a money, right? You are just trying to substitute meat with a money when you're talking about being a provider for the family. And it is a huge issue when the man goes out and gets a rabbit and the woman goes out and gets a deer, right? I mean, it's a huge issue on the man's ego. And unfortunately, because of the fact that India has been a patriarchal society, you know evolved through a caste system where the fundamental definitions of work has been that, hey, these men have to do these things, and women, and especially the upper caste women, are supposed to take care of the household, and the lower caste women are supposed to take care, go out and actually work out in the field, which are like manual labor. I think the not really working and not having to work became an aspirational thing for the upper caste thing, and that's kind of come in over these years, right? And so male, uh, you know being the main provider in the family, it becomes such a huge thing. And whether it is serials, whether it's movies, whether it's sas bahu serials which are actually happening around, which kind of constantly talks about the same stereotype images, right? uh, मेहरा खानदान की बहू बाहर जाकर नहीं काम कर सकती, right? लोग क्या कहेंगे? Now all these dumb things which actually kind of constantly reinforces the stereotype. I don't think we are there enough to say that men are okay. Men are okay with it, and women are also okay to have partners who actually earn much more than them. I think when you're doing a face to face, somebody having to have a conversation with them face to face, yeah, it might be okay because they want to look good. But inherently in the back of the mind, I'm sure that this feeling is there that no, we still need to be the primary providers for the family. And that's my initial take on this, Esther.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Manoj. And you're really freshening up my Hindi today because I have to catch up with you offline. But we all got, I think, the level of societal conditioning and how it affects us from, not only, movies and, norms in society and what they mean. And that's the reality that you're bringing to the table, that yes, intellectually we all may agree on something, but there is an underlying emotional, maybe more subconscious reality that we need to be aware of. So I'm coming to you, Anuj, on this point, and there is a comment from one leader on the audience as well, Preeti Kaul, saying that it's really not so much of a couple thing, it's more like a societal thing, and that connects to the question that I'd love to bring to you. About that stereotype of, especially in the context of Indian marriages, because a lot of our audience is joining us from India today. So is that male breadwinning really central to Indian marriages, or you think it's really not so much about the couple, as Preeti was saying, or it is still there from the stereotyping of husband and wife in the role that we play within an Indian marriage? Over to you,
So it's
Anuj.
interesting to discuss this. I'm the other male on this panel along with Manoj, and I like rabbits. Uh, but it's an interesting question here, right? I think if I'm about 13 years of my life, I've lived in different parts of the world, right? Besides then coming back and also working in India. And if you take where I live, the US, the Singapore and Philippines, there were very different approaches to this issue, and it wasn't so loud as in saying it's an issue, right? I mean, it seemed like an issue. A colleague of mine and a good friend of mine gave me a very interesting perspective. She said, "Look, you are Gen X, and then the baby boomers before me, basically." She said, "Look, there were more arranged marriages in India than there were in happened in the West. And traditionally, when this would happen, there would be a kind of a age gap between the man and the woman, right? And quite often the man being the older of the marriage. And even if both worked, then very often the man would have had a head start on working than the woman. and there would be a difference in compensation or in take home or whatever it is, right? There to that stereotype of saying getting used to a man earning more than a woman. I think it became kind of a norm, became kind of a place where people started, seeing that happen more often than not, and that possibly caused the stereotyping in their mind as well. And then, of course, the society helps, right? Like nobody else, with all these issues. I think it's just a conditioning, because when I go back and now I talk of where else I lived, and again, if you go to Philippines, for example, and I was fortunate to live there, it used to be a matriarchal society at heart. I mean, it always has been, and there it doesn't matter. I mean, a woman earns more than a man. That's absolutely fine, and that's where it is. So I think it's more on the stereotyping is more about where we are in our society, and it's a shift that's happening and is going to happen, right? So now you go from me Gen X to say a millennial, or a Gen Z, and now the Gen Alpha. I don't see this being an issue at all. I mean, I see the issue going away because, not just because of less arranged marriages, but it's also the fact that, look, this just goes away. I mean, there are more women working, there are more women in colleges. If you go to North America, in fact, there are more women in colleges than men are in colleges, and that's going to change things basically because there will be a better compensation, a better take home by a woman than a man. She'll earn more than a man, and I believe that's absolutely fine, right? I think it's just something that the men will have to learn to leave their stereotypes behind, uh, or suffer in their own anxieties basically while this happens, really. So I think it's just a stereotype that's going to go away. It's going away now. It's going to go away faster than we can imagine.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anuj, for that viewpoint. And I think, as you mentioned, it is a matter of time. But the reality is, if you take on the moment we are today, and I'm coming to you, Prachi, is that there is stress. And there is still, in that any transition time, we'll have those challenges. And I love to invite you, Prachi, to come in against the motion to say, well, yes, it's inevitable. Yes, there are more women. Yes, there are more, love marriages. Yes, there is more freedom. But the reality is that men who potentially live in a household where the woman earn more, they tend to be, research CNBC.com stated that there's more stress and there's potentially more disputes and more conflict. So what's your viewpoint on that, Prachi?
Thanks a lot, Esther, for the lovely question. And so glad, first of all, that IBM and BAs have come together to discuss such a subject. It really expands mindsets overall. So coming to the question, it's interesting and right that men don't really feel men enough if they're not earning enough. And that is what you see around. I mean, it's a good concept to have right now, intellectually speaking, that it's okay for women, or women are okay to have partners who earn more than them, but look at the reality. The other aspect is it's only a straight strata of the society where it matters log kya kahenge, what will people say. The moment it starts mattering to us that what will people say, then men have a problem with that, or even women have a problem with earning more than their spouse or partners. You see, if you go to your house help in India, I'm just talking India right now, see how many men are actually not the breadwinners, or forget the primary breadwinners. Actually, they're not the breadwinners. The women are happily doing it. They don't have an eminence problem. They don't have a problem with log kya kahenge. The moment we get a little educated, the moment we have a little bit of a problem with our external eminence, we start having a problem with that. Then it starts mattering a lot. Log kya kahenge, what will people say? So the reality is women professionals are far away from it, and I don't blame them. It's societal conditioning, it's the systemic bias. What will my mother say? What will my mother-in-law say? What will my friends say? What will I tell people? Can I be the VP of an organization and take my husband there, say he's a plumber, I'm so proud of him? How many people can really do that? Let's face the reality. It may happen 50 years later. Great, let's wait for that, but we're far away from that. That is one. The other, the that was a number two reason I gave. Number three, and the last one, is that why are men not feeling men enough, is because it's really important with all this women empowerment that women also make space for men in their life. Men don't want to be useless. We as women are not trying to say that we can do everything you can do, and you pretty much indirectly we're saying you're pretty much useless. We're not trying to do that. And if that is happening indirectly, directly, then it's real loss. We're really hitting our own foot with a sword, because that is not what we want. We don't want women versus men. We want women and men. And that is what my take is.
All right, thank you so much, Prachi. And I'm picking up one of the comments that you mentioned, and I'm coming to you, Yukti, because there's a comment from the audience saying that even women secretly admired partners who earn more. So to Manoj's point, it's the point of view we're taking, whether women are okay or whether men are okay, or maybe women are secretly admiring when their spouse make more money. So I find that quite intriguing, and thank you, Moots, for sharing that. What's your viewpoint? We're talking about here woman being okay, but her point is that actually women want also that their spouses will earn more, because that's kind of what secretly they may admire. What's your viewpoint on that?
Okay, that's a good point, in fact, and I would like to bring in my personal example here. I'm a woman who earns equal. I mean, our career graphs have been very similar, sometimes up and down between me and my husband, right? But today, as on being on the equal footing, what am I seeking from my partner? Right, not the traditional role of that he has to provide for me. I'm not looking at economic support from him. So for me, it doesn't matter whether is he earning more, but what I want from my partner, as probably I'm speaking for a lot of women who who are earning more or equal to their partners, what we are seeking is probably intellectual and emotional compatibility. Number two, I think empathy. And probably the most important point would be an equitable sharing of responsibilities of household and children care, so that there's an absolute balance and both can prosper, right? And I would like to bring in here that my husband is very proud at every success that I have had, right? And he's always supported that, and he's very much happy in terms of motivating each other to prosper and giving that space. And most important, right, and it is not limited to just the both of us as a couple. I live in a joint family where my mother-in-law, who herself has been a working woman for the most of her life, she's equally supportive of both our careers, right? So we have never seen, and leading to the point, right, most important is that our children, my son and daughter, are watching this, and they are immensely proud that there is no definition of gender role when it comes either at prospering at work or at family. So I don't think that I would, if I'm independent, if I'm earning equally or more, I'm seeking a more financially well off or who's doing more as a partner at all. So I mean that's completely my point of view.
Thank you, Yuti. Thanks for sharing your example and your experience as a way to showcase how, two
Yeah, because
professionals,
the
working professionals.
expectations, yeah, the expectations, expectations are different, right? When you are on an equal footing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So that's Yukti's example. And I think, Manoj, you talked about the different levels, and I'm staying with that point a little bit more, because there's one of our audience leaders who mentioned, Preeti Kotian mentioned that, yes, even though men may be earning less, but the challenge is really is not so much about money, but how do we compensate on household chores and other responsibilities beyond paying bills. There is many multiple things that household needs to deal with. So her point is that it's not so much about the money, but are we really sharing equal chores at home? So Manoj, your viewpoint, and then I'm coming back to Prachi and Anuj.
I mean, I would like to generously borrow from the points which Anuj had actually mentioned about arranged marriages and love marriages, right? I mean, I think the stats say that even today, even though the numbers are increasing about love marriages, apparently the 2020s, there's a report which says that 93% of marriages in India are arranged. And there's a New York Times article which says that there are out 1,500 matrimonial sites in India, which essentially says that it's all being arranged, right? And why? Why is this still the case? Because uh, people look at compatibility, right? People look at families are the ones who try and see, okay, hey, who's the right person for my son, my daughter, and then kind of get them arranged. And I think in that, when they're trying to two families come together and trying to make that union, well, they obviously look at this compatible. Hey, are they okay to get to a point where they are equally sharing? And obviously, to the point Anuj made also about you get a head start. The age difference is also there. So essentially, it's not a question about um, um, when women start to earn more.
Yeah.
I think when they start the relationship knowing that, well, that's how it is one thing. But organically, when it actually happens over a period of time, when it actually happens, then there is stress and strain, which also comes into the relationship, right? And Yukti also mentioned about joint families. I think, again, because of the culture which we have in India, I would easily assume that over 70% of families kind of live with their families. And I'm not talking about the urban, right? I'm talking about when you're talking about India as a whole. And typically, because it's the husband or the son who is supposed to take care of their parents, the it's the in-laws who, when the woman comes in and she's staying with her in-laws, right? She's not staying with her mom and dad, but it's typically the son's, the husband's parents who are there. And so there again, when it comes to expectations within the family, I think you know things are changing. Obviously, things are changing. People are taking equal responsibility, but still there is an expectation because the people who are staying with you are from the previous generations and they've been through that, and they say, hey, if we have been through it and we are okay, this is the actual equation which actually works. And probably that could also be a reason why we have low divorce rates when compared to the rest of the world. Again, not saying that the divorce rates are not increasing. Yes, it is increasing. The divorce rates are increasing. And is this a contributing factor? It could be, right? Amongst the various other contributing factors, this power equation being disrupted could also be a contributing factor amongst so many other things there. So I think while the while the scenario is changing, while the landscape is changing, and women and men are expected to take on equal responsibilities there, I think we still have a long way to go. This conditioning is still there, expectations are still there, and even if you take the cultural aspects of it, if you look at a gods, for example, right? There is always a Shiv and a Parvati. There is always a Krishna and a Radha. And there is always, a Ram and a Sita. That is the balance. But once the woman becomes a little more powerful, like the Durga or the Kali, there is no male around. Okay, well, there is nobody there. So it kind of changes the balance a little bit, and it's there in the culture, it's there in the DNA, and we are happy about the fact that things are changing, are evolving. But my kids are definitely going to be looking at it in a different manner, right? I'm going to definitely look at it in a different manner. But as things stands right now, because if you take the survey today vis-a-vis 10 years before and 10 years after, I'm sure that the results will be vastly different, and there'll be a lot more progressive people who are answering. But I would still stick to the point that we have a long way to go.
Thank you, Manoj, for staying true to your position. And I know that sometimes when I look at our panelists today, we've kind of put you in a situation to go for and against, and you had to prepare those arguments. Some of them you fully believe, some of them you're pushing a little bit that envelope, but just really with the intent to have a more diverse viewpoint. So Anuj, I'm coming to you, and Manoj mentioned about these ego fights, and these are realities. Especially, I love your point about it may happen later in our marriage, not on day one, but there may be something that actually changes the equation midway, and suddenly a woman may be earning more than a husband, a spouse, in that context. So, how do you see these ego hassles being devastating for a relationship? Do you think that makes a valid point from Manoj, or you think in today's context, the relationship between husband and wife is very different from maybe the relationship in our parents' generation?
An interesting question. And again, just want to vouch for the great job that Manoj did. Knowing him fully well, he did a great job of actually presenting something that he's not. But again, right, I think it's not a. I wish there was the easy answer, right? Let's look at parts of a society where it exists today, where matriarchy exists today in some way and form, right? Segments of Kerala. If you go to Meghalaya, right, there are the Khasi and the Garo tribes, right, where it's totally matriarchal, right? It's the youngest um, daughter who inherits the property. It is if they don't have a daughter, they actually go in, adopt one into their family so that she can inherit, right? There, the breadwinner quite often is the woman, right? Uh, we haven't seen societies break down there, right? You can go and take a trip to Meghalaya. It's a beautiful place. It's not as if the family systems has come to an end, right? I mean, it's not as if egos have got people killing each other or pushing each other out of their lives and divorcing and all of that, right? Today, even if you go to the West now, I mean, a third of European women are the primary bread earner in the family. I wish it was the two-third and not the one-third. A fourth in America. In some metropolitan areas of US, including New York, including Washington, including LA, the women earn equal, if not more, and are the primary breadwinners. And the society still exists and does well. So I think it's a question of, and it's a male problem. I mean, honestly, right? We are the males on the call. Uh, it is what we are conditioned to believing in our own mind versus what the reality will be, right? Uh, I and Manoj represents the Gen X. I keep coming back to that. When you go to the millennials, when you go to the Gen Alphas, the Gen Zs, I don't think they will be like us, right? They will grow up in an environment that Yukti talked about, where they see what happens when a house husband is absolutely okay. A man is doing more than he would otherwise typically in his mind, and be an equal owner for all the chores at home. I think that's what's coming up ahead of us, right? And I think, yeah, are there ego issues today? Yeah, there are. I mean, it's not that it's not. We can't wish it away. But I think the men are understanding, and this is not who they want to be, and this is not what society is going to look like. Yeah, and that reality, I think, if it's not dawned on men yet, I think that it better dawn quickly, and that's where it's going. I mean, I understand the ego issues, the frictions that happen in some families, but there are equivalent number of families where it doesn't happen, and that's the light at the end of the tunnel that we should be looking at.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And that's the silver lining of the future. And I'm going to invite Prachi to comment. And I think we've covered a little bit about the conditioning and specifically the role of schools and maybe even a generational shift, from where when we were in school, what were the traditional, draw your family kind of exercise. And all of us will kind of draw the family where there's a man who goes to work and there's a woman who's at home, and that was the concept when we grew up, even though that may or may not have been the family in our home, but that's what the educational system showed us. Now, what's the role that education system plays, Prachi, in terms of being able to really create that foundation for the future? So take us a little bit through your reflection on that.
A big role education plays, and that education is not only taught to us in schools, it is taught to us in the playgrounds, at home, and especially at the dining table when we have conversations, when we talk to each other, when we see our mother either in the kitchen or mostly in the kitchen. In my generation, we've seen mothers mostly in the kitchen, or father coming back in the evening, and he's done his day's job, and he'll either look at the newspaper or watch the television. That is what we've seen, but probably our children will not see the same. They'll see, like my brother and sister-in-law, they have a child, and my brother actually took a sabbatical when they had a child. So and my sister-in-law went back to work. So he's seeing something absolutely different from what we are seeing. And therefore, education is important right at school, right at home, right when you see parents, because parents are like gods when we are born, right? We are so impressionable at that time, and the roles that our parents play at that time. If let's say I've always seen my father extremely dominant, or my mother always tending or taking care of him, and I've always seen my father only earning money and not really contributing in any other way, then that is what I learned as a woman, that this is what my role is in future. And education comes, let's say 5 years, 4 years later. Already 4 years, for 5 years, I've seen my parents do it, and already my mindset is like, mind is quite set in the roles that I'm going to play out in the next 40 years, 50 years of my life. And absolutely, as Yukti and Anuja saying, that generations to come will be very different, because they will see our generation where parents are playing equal role, where teachers, where basically in schools they're already learning, or they already know much more than we know about LGBTQ plus people, about people with disability, about neurodiverse people. We know it now after reading it, after knowing much about it in the corporate world, but they already know that in school. So that's a big difference. And I wish the time comes soon where people fall in love for the person that we are, for the person that for the behavior or for the feelings they have from the heart, and not really seeing how much money the woman or the man earns. I was talking about my brother. My brother actually, we are a Hindu family, and my brother got married to this lady who's a Mohammedan. And I was talking to a cousin of mine who's 9 years younger than me. And she, at that time, when they were sort of planning to get married, and my parents and her parents were not so gung-ho about it. They were okay, but they were not like, wow, what a thing to do. And and then I was talking to this cousin of mine, 9 years younger to me, and she said, दीदी, क्या उन्हें उनका कास्ट के बारे में पता नहीं था, पहले रिलीजन के बारे में? What I'm saying is that she's telling me that, didn't he know that he's a Muslim? I mean, how could you fall in love? So the point is that it also sort of alludes to the fact that it doesn't matter what generation you're coming from. You can be a very expanded mindset, a millennial mindset, even at 50. You can be a very narrow mindset at 10 today. It doesn't matter. I really feel that it's the mindset that's important, and education plays a role, and we get educated all the time. It's not that my education is over. I'm also getting educated today with all my panelists and with you today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Prachi. And I'm inviting the audience to participate in the poll as well. I think the team has been pasting some polls, and a lot of interesting data is coming from there. And I'm enjoying the conversation that we are having in the stage, but I'm also enjoying the conversation that is happening on our comment side. And I'm going to invite all of you to comment on this one thread of conversation between multiple leaders. So Moods is saying it's easier to go with the flow, let's go with the flow. And then Siddhar saying, well, it's not easy to change the flow. And what we are really discussing today is that the flow is changing, but what is it that we can do to accelerate that? And as Prachi was saying, develop ourselves to really be holistic human beings. So any comment on this? Yes, the flow is changing, and I think that's something that we all agree, but we do have two positions here. One is the flow is changing very well and naturally, and another position saying, well, there are a lot of challenges, and maybe we need to think of architecting that change in a way that it's less disruptive or less painful. And Manoj talked about even, potentially divorces and so on and so forth. Now, what would be your word of advice to all of you, team, to say, well, if we have to make this flow to really change, maybe faster or less painful, what is it, some of the things that you could share with our audience today? And I know this is not on script, but I'm really enjoying that conversation, so we'd love to get your viewpoints on this.
I think I can go with
Go
what
ahead,
Prachi
Manoj.
was about education, right? Because as part of my role, we also do a lot of these CSR engagements, and education skilling happens to be one of the most important thing which we do in terms of our initiatives. And if you look at the how the Indian population is actually there, right? 34% of population is in the urban cities, and we still have a sizable population in the rural, right? And most of these programs which we do are in tier two and tier three cities. And if you go there and ask kids who are in the eighth, ninth, and tenth standards, and ask them, hey, what do you want to do in your life? They want a job. Okay, they are okay with a job, but they're not thinking about a career, right? They are looking at a job. They don't mind working. Typically, if you ask a girl, what is it which you want to do? First thing is, yeah, I want to become a teacher. Okay, what next? If not a teacher, definitely get into a government job. So it's just to say that I'm working, right? I'm working. I want to be financially independent. But when we go and do these interventions, even though, I mean, our program is called STEM for Girls, that we kind of inspire girls, young girls, into the world of emerging tech. But we include boys. We include boys in these programs as well, because I think boys play a very, very essential part in ensuring that this young girls who are there, they're part of the whole ecosystem, right? Boys also happen to be part of the ecosystem, and they listen to their peers, their classmates, their brothers, their relatives. Obviously, parents play a huge part. So we kind of include all of them in trying to tell them that, hey, the days of yesterday where the place for a young girl is in the kitchen, all that is gone now, right? You need women to go out and work. There are jobs which are actually available, and it's quite sad that the female employability is actually dropped in the last year. In 22, it's actually dropped when compared to 21, right? But essentially, what we are trying to tell them is that there are opportunities, right? And when women go out, when girls go out, I think it's going to really improve not only the household, that obvious, but also the state, the country, and so on and so forth, I think. And then we include the boys in these conversations, because I think when you start young, and Prachi, you Yukti, all of them are talking about their examples of how they're seeing, how kids around them are actually being inducted into the new way of thinking. um, in tier 2 and tier 3 cities also, I think we need to do the same interventions. We need to ensure that boys are also trained and taught about these things along with the girls, right? And while we give them a vision about what is possible, I think it's very important for boys to get out of this mindset, this stereotype mindset, to say, hey, I have to be the one, and to look down on what a capability of a woman is and all that. So I think it's extremely important, like from that in education. So I really want to want to stress a little more about
Yeah.
the importance of education there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Manoj, for bringing that up. And I think you're absolutely correct. When we're including the boys and the girls, then the whole what's expected or what's possible changes. And I think that's even true for this panel today. So I'm really glad that we have everyone represented. So, Yukti, I'm coming to you on your word of advice. What will be your word of advice to really see that transformation being more seamless, because I think all of us agreed that it's inevitable, and that's the reality. Now, what will be your word of advice for women and men to be able to transition seamless? Over to you.
Esther, before giving that my last comments on the word of advice, I just want to comment on this because I was just reading through the comments and very, very engaging chats. Right, one of the points which I saw recurring is that this trend we see only happening in higher class societies, richer families, and all. Right, again, would like to bring in come from a middle class, born and brought up in a middle class family in a tier 2, tier 3 cities. where I have seen in my, not only my father's, but even my grandfather's generation, right, where we have seen very enterprising women who have had their own businesses. And this has been embraced beautifully within my family in terms of, encouraging them, supporting them. So it's not a trend. And this is, I'm sure there are many families like mine everywhere, right? So definitely wouldn't agree that this only is seen in the higher class society or whatever. It's pretty much there in the middle class as well, as it's evolving. So that's one point which I wanted to address. Another, in terms of what Manoj said, it's inevitable, right, in terms of the change is going to happen. And it's important that the schools and at home we play the role of equal education to our daughters and to our sons equally, right, so that there's a learning at both sides, like teaching your sons to in fact equally take the responsibility of household as much as the daughter needs to be kind of given higher education. Now, as a culture, I know we are still working this out, we are evolving, but my message to women would be if you're earning more, embrace it. Be proud of what you've worked for. You're working hard for it. If you have a supportive husband, that's great. And it always takes two to tango, right? So the message for men is that slowly accept, and slowly embrace the change that's happening. The empathy has to be at both ends, men and women equally, because it takes two to tango, and without each other, you'll not be able to prosper. So, like, one thing, like the earlier it used to be women cannot work, right? Then it came to a situation where I see around, आप काम तो कर सकते हो, you can work definitely and you can pursue your passion, but only after finishing your household work. Like, finish your cooking, finish your household work, cook your dinner, lunch, and then pursue whatever you want to pursue, right? So that cannot happen. We cannot do it all. So time for the the men to accept that kind of change and take that responsibility, I guess.
Wonderful.
So
Thank you so much. And I love your "It Takes Two to Tango" closing that you're sharing with us. And I'm coming to you, Prachi, and then we'll come to you, Anuj, as well. Prachi, what will be your closing or word of advice for all of us, men and women? Because it's beautiful that we have such a diverse audience today, and really we have picked up a topic that I think it's very close to each one of us, because either we are husbands or we are wives or we are husbands to be or wives to be. So I think it's very close to everyone's heart. So what will be your word of advice if we are going through these challenges ourselves, or if we want to spread these kind of conversations around in our area of influence?
Just as I give my threefold advice, I also wish in my heart that everyone has a family like Yukti. I mean, Yukti is such a rare example in even today's society that I just hope, wish, and pray that we have an environment like that. I would say number one, be sincere fully, but not so serious about life. If we are a little less serious about what people will say about us, or what will happen if I do this, what will happen if I fall in love with that person, what will people say, what will he say, she say, I think that has to drop. Let's just be sincere with whatever we are doing, uh, but less serious about our reputation. That'll be so good. We'll become more human. The other, I would say that right from the beginning, if we really want women to play that role of 50-50, then right from the beginning, girls need to have that space in the house. They should not grow up thinking, oh, one day we'll leave this family. Oh, one day, and I'm really talking India right now. The son is supposed to take care of the parents, not the daughter. So son, it's just unsaid. It's just given that the son is supposed to take care of the parents, and the daughter will go to her house, get married, and take care of the in-laws. That shouldn't happen anymore. Girls should have equal responsibilities in this house as well. uh, Only then is equality important. Equality will not just start in the corporate world one fine day. Or why should we expect men, our husbands or spouses, to be equal to us if our parents are not equal to us? So that is two. Third is, let's be a little heart oriented as well. We are turning into a generation which is so mind oriented all the time, very lopsided. It's all about money, it's all about stature, it's all about what people think about us. Let's be a little playful, let's be a little heart oriented and start falling in love, because I feel mard ko bhi dard hota hai actually. Men also feel the pains. Let allow women to breathe right in your home. I'm talking to the parents right now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Prachi, for bringing that in. And Anuj, I'm coming to you for your word of advice as well. And in parallel, we're seeing some comments as well coming from the audience saying that, things will not change unless we actively revolt. And there's this word used by, we have Ratish saying that, we need to revolt against this flow. So what will be your word of advice to accelerate those societal changes that, you want to see in the different levels of society?
I think in the chat, I think Moods wrote, "Be the change you want the world to be." Right. I mean, so I'm not saying all of us are so old, but I think if you're getting older and you've got a daughter who's to get married, don't do the same thing that you don't want others to do onto um, to you or to anybody else. Right. It's very easy, right? For me, it was easy to come on one side of the fence and talk about it, saying it's changing, it's great. Actually, it's not great. I mean, there's a challenge, right? Let's call it out. Um, and that change will come because of us and nobody else, right? So every small step that we take to be the change that we want the world to be helps, right? Whether it's cousins are getting married and making sure that they love each other, that's all that counts. If it's if you are in-laws yourself, then start thinking about not asking the wrong questions and looking and saying, do the two people who are getting together love each other? I come from a love marriage, right? I don't think we ever thought of compensation either way, right? This is the Punjabi getting married to a Kashmiri. We had other problems to solve and not compensation, right? I mean, that was the easier of the problems. So I think it's not a. I think while we can say, look, it'll not happen fast enough. There's too much to do, so let's give up. I think these small changes that we do ourselves make a big difference. And we have a say in lots of things. We have say in marriages that happen around us. We have a say in how people are treated around us. I think you have to chip away at it forever, basically, I mean, till you really see these Gen Alphas take over and live life the way it should be lived. I think we have a role to play as well till then.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anuj. And I'm so excited to see that, we all had to play a role and we did, and you did really well. And finally, we're all coming to that conversion to say, well, at the end of the day, it's all about fulfilling everyone's desires, potentials, and, aspirations, and how do we make it happen? And to Anuj's point, not just for ourselves, but also for the area of influence we have around it, and how much is that? It's actually a lot more than what we think it is. So any closing, team, we have another 2 minutes. Any other comments that you want to leave the audience with before we close? Happy to anything else that anybody would like to share before we close today.
I think
I
one
actually
point.
All right, Yukti, go. And
Sorry,
then I'm coming to you,
one point.
Manoj.
Sure. As we spoke about, I think one point, right? As we spoke about giving equal education, and education starts at home and the schools. I think it's equally important as corporates and at the workplace, bringing in the right policies, right? For example, like you have a maternity leave, and you have, you equally have the paternity leave. So that facilitates even from the workforce and from the working this thing to encourage men to take on more responsibility. The policies that will facilitate this transition. I think that's one point which I wanted to bring in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yukti, for bringing that. Manoj, any other point you had?
Yes,
Yes,
Esther. I
go
mean,
ahead.
I'm kind of also looking at the chats and some of these comments. What happened, right? I mean, if that happens, what do you do? I think a couple of things will come to mind, right? I don't think women should shy away from having the money talk at home. When women are earning as much or more, they should be confident enough to have that talk about money, about investing, about where are you spending the money, where is it going, right? So I think, and they should learn from each other. I think that is extremely important. Two is they should be very, very open talking about the threats. Now, why is it threatening for the other partner if I earn more? I mean, and if you're understanding that underlying threat and the emotion behind it, maybe I think that can be addressed. The three is who's making the final decisions in terms of finances, right? Is it jointly made? Is it just still one person who's actually making it? I think that's important for partners to get to a consensus. And the most important, which I really feel, is that um, you should probably keep money out of the conversations around chores. I mean, in fact, for example, you should not be saying, "Hey, my work is more important than your work," and because I'm bringing in the most money, and because people are doing that, maybe somebody is earning lesser, somebody is earning more. The person who's earning lesser, they love what they're doing, right? So it's not about comparing about work and trying to say my work is more important because I'm bringing the more money to the table. And as long as you are able to, I think, maybe address these things jointly together and be more open with your partner, hopefully issues will not be there, and you'll be able to sort it out quickly. So if any, you will be able to sort things out.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Manoj, for that very positive, constructive closing on saying, well, with dialogue, you can actually solve majority of those ego and challenges. And I think the dialogue is not just with the spouse, but a dialogue with, your larger family and how do you move that forward. So thank you very much, all of you. Manoj Balachandran, Head CSR, IBM India, Yukti Punjabi, Director, Strategic Account, IBM Technology, Prachi Rastogi, DNI Leader for APAC, and Anuj Malhotra, Senior Partner Vice President, Service Lines and Operations at IBM. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you for taking us through that journey of challenging some of those perspectives today. So thank you very, very much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Esther. This was a lovely discussion. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for your comments, your reflections, your very provocative questions. And I want to take the opportunity to thank as well the IBM team for putting this together and the We Ace team as well for designing this conversation. And I hope you all had a wonderful time like we did. Thank you very much and have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.
Bye.